Right folks, welcome back to Liam's AP Psychology video. My name is Liam Kim, also known as Jinso Kim, a junior in Korea International School Jeju, and in today's video we're going to talk about some new vocabulary terms in AP Psychology that you must know for the upcoming AP Psychology exam. So if you're ready, I'm ready, let's get to it. Okay, so starting with automatic processing. Automatic processing is the unconscious encoding of incidental information such as space-time and frequency and of well-learned information such as word meanings. An autonomic nervous system is a part of the peripheral nervous system that controls the glands and the muscles of the internal organs such as the heart. Its sympathetic division arouses, its parasympathetic division calms. Now let's look at the availability heuristic. Availability heuristic is used for estimating the likelihood of events based on their availability in memory if instances come readily to mind. Perhaps because of their vividness, we presume such events are common. So, availability heuristic, for example, is kind of used when you're kind of making some approximate estimations for the outcomes of events, right? So, availability heuristic means if some kind of a vivid memory is available within your mind at the time, which is kind of like present at the moment, if it's in your hearts, it kind of that kind of event becomes like a barometer or like a kind of a ground stick for your assessment of the outcome of certain events. So for example, let's say you saw a plane crash into the Amazon jungles, right? Because let's say like there was a terror within the plane, there was terrorism, and then the plane crashed to the Amazon forest, and let's say all passengers died. Well, that's a really extreme event, right? But it's still very vivid. You can kind of, through imagery within your mind, you can kind of picture how the plane would have crashed and how all people would have died. You can kind of picture within your mind at the moment, right? That I'm telling you this kind of situation, right? So this kind of vivid memory, it might lead you to kind of generalize that if you ride an airplane, then the same kind of event will happen to you, right? So if you ride an airplane, just like the plane that crashed in Amazon because of terrorism, you may be afraid that your plane will also contain a terrorist who will crash your plane to the Amazon forest. And although the case of the plane that crashed to the Amazon forest is a really rare event that really does not really happen a lot, because that kind of memory and because of that information is really, really vivid within your mind, you kind of have a tendency, because of the availability heuristic, you kind of have a tendency to generalize that that same kind of event will happen to your airplane as well. That's really interesting, right? It's really interesting how the human mind works. Now let's look at aversive conditioning. This is a type of counter-conditioning that associates an unpleasant state, such as nausea, with an unwanted behavior, such as drinking. So, let's say your dad really likes to smoke, right? And you know that smoking is really bad for your health, and I really advise you not to smoke at all times, like whatever happens, because smoking can really be detrimental to your health, and I really personally do not understand why people would smoke, because it's really not good for their lung health. But anyways, so let's say your dad smokes, and as a loving son or a loving daughter of your dad's, you might want your dad to stop smoking, right? So whenever your dad smokes, let's say, although this is a really kind of extreme example, whenever your dad smokes, let's say you kind of hit your dad, right? Which should not happen at all times. You don't hit your dad, right? You should never do that. But let's say, just as an example to kind of like enhance your understanding, let's say you hit your dad every time they smoke. Then your dad will not like getting hit by you, right? A loving child of theirs is hitting them, right? They would really hate the situation. And whenever they smoke, you keep hitting them. You keep hitting them. And whenever your dad smokes, your dad will learn that whenever he smokes, their children, either he or she or they are going to hit the dad, right? The dad knows that dad has learned that if they smoke again, their children will hit them. And the dad does not like that, does not want that to happen. So, as a result, the dad will come to stop smoking, right? Because he wants to get away from the situation of getting hit by their children, they will stop smoking, and then your goal will be achieved, right? And that's what aversive conditioning is. By conditioning your dad to stop smoking, because you have related hitting your dad, which is an act that your dad does not want, and smoking, which is an act that your dad does, because you have connected them through conditioning, which is called aversive conditioning in a full kind of word. Now your dad stops smoking, right? And that was a really good example of aversive conditioning, right? On the actual AP psychology test, they give you these kinds of really extreme examples. I'm not really kind of like talking in a really intense and a really kind of extreme way. That's how exactly your AP psychology test will like kind of ask you what's a stimulus, right? They're gonna put you in those situations through their questions, and then in MCQs, when they ask you those kind of situations and like tell you to identify which kind of situation this is, you need to cleverly select the availability heuristic, right? That will make me real proud as your teacher. Okay, now let's end this video by talking about aversive conditioning. We talked about aversive conditioning. I'm sorry, aversive conditioning. We talked with the dad example, and let's end this video by talking about the axon. The axon is the extension of a neuron, which ends in branching terminal fibers through which messages pass to other neurons or to muscles or glands. So we talked about this in Unit 2, right? So axon is part of a neuron where there are terminal buttons. It says terminal fibers here, but I told you about, I kind of phrased it as terminal buttons in my lectures in Unit 2. Feel free to check the Unit 2 video again if you do not know how this kind of process works. So your axon is where messages are passed to other neurons or to muscles or glands through the terminal buttons, right? Because it's an extension of a neuron. That's how it passes on the neurotransmitters to the next neuron. Okay folks, that was the end of today's video, and I hope it helped you a lot. In the next video, we're going to talk about some additional AP psychology terms, and stay tuned for more updates. Thank you guys, and good luck with your studies. Peace out.